Hamas has rejected the latest ceasefire proposal as the terrorist group is demanding that the Israel Defense Forces evacuate two strategic areas in Gaza. Now, to chat about this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, who joins us once again from the Foreign Desk in Los Angeles. Lisa, will we see a ceasefire anytime soon between Hamas and Israel?
Doesn't look like it, right, Hal? Yet another rejection by Hamas. You would think a group that screams ceasefire, ceasefire, or genocide would want an end to this war, would want to protect its people, would want a natural, ending to all of this, so that the people, the death toll can stop. But yet again, they either don't come to the negotiating table, or when they do, they reject any offers that are pretty decent. And a lot of the Arab countries that are involved, Egypt, Qatar, have said that these are good deals, that they should take it. Of course, Antony Blinken has gone to the region and is involved yet again. Something the United States is very keen on getting is some sort of deal before election time here in the United States. I think it's very important for them not to be involved in this craziness while we go into elections in November. But it looks like the terror group from Hamas is not complying, and here we are.
So how can Israel be assured that any of the hostages are still alive, Lisa?
Right. And that's really the sad part about all this. You notice how, the terror group Hamas, I mean, they are the formal leadership of the Palestinian people in Gaza. And yet when you ask them, how much aid do you have? They don't have a number. You ask them, how many hostages are left? Where are they? What are the details? They don't have them. But as soon as there's some sort of attack, they have the exact number in terms of death toll. And that goes around the mainstream media, and all the legacy media is covering that and quoting those numbers. It's really a horrific situation. Obviously, I can't really state that enough. But it's also interesting how the information war has taken off, and how Hamas has been truly masterful at launching that propaganda war around the world to really contribute to this rise of anti-Semitism, in violent crimes against the Jewish community and those who support them. And I know that a lot of churches are concerned about safety and security right now as well. How can Israel be sure that this will even stop once they do reach a ceasefire deal? That's really the question, and I think it brings us back to the two priorities that Israel had from the get-go. After October 7th happened, October 8th, Israel was very clear about two initiatives. One, to bring the hostages back. Unfortunately, many of them have perished, and to your point, who knows how many more have died in captivity. And number two, to decimate Hamas. And what does that really mean? That means to take the existential threat that is surrounds Israel off the table to the best of their ability. So.
Now, speaking of which, the Times of Israel is reporting that two senior Hamas terrorists were killed in an Israeli drone strike in the West Bank over the weekend, Lisa. The IDF says that a pair of Hamas operatives were involved in planning a shooting attack in the Jordan Valley last week, in which 23-year-old Yonatan Deutsch was killed and another civilian was seriously wounded.
Right. If you look at the IDF's tactics here, it's been very targeted, extremely tactical, trying to pinpoint the leaders and the masterminds of these terror plots. The biggest one was, Haniyeh, who was assassinated on Iranian soil just a couple of weeks ago. It's very, very interesting how well the Israeli intelligence apparatus has worked in really getting the location of these individuals, making these attacks pinpointed so that others are not injured or in harm's way, and going after them. But it's kind of like playing whack-a-mole. It's unbelievable in that part of the world how many people are volunteering to blow themselves up in the name of jihad. And that is really when we get to the root of the issue, is that the brainwashing, the education. And when you look at a UN organization like UNRWA, which is the UN, the United Nations organization that was entrusted with only taking care of the Palestinian people, it gets US taxpayer money, Canadian taxpayer money, to truly dedicate itself to ground up education, young people. But instead, they were using that money to incorporate themselves into this jihad, teaching children, exactly that, to kill Jews and to launch jihad against the infidel. And many of them, as Hal, were actually involved. There's evidence to show that they were actually involved in the October 7th attacks. So I think we have to get back to the drawing board with regards to education, with regards to how to fix this issue at its root, and not just try to play whack-a-mole with these horrific terrorists who are the masterminds behind all of these plots.
Lisa, as the Democratic National Convention kicks off this week, Vice President Harris is expected to accept the nomination to become her party's nominee heading into the November election. And it looks like it might be a fairly tight race between Harris and Donald Trump.
Depends who you ask, right? A lot of polls have Kamala Harris ahead of Trump, and some polls are showing that Trump is really neck and neck, and it will be a very close race. It's very hard to tell because the media is very biased in this situation, and there have been articles showing how reports rather showing that the Harris campaign has had a hand in scrubbing the internet, really influencing headlines, really creating a candidate that is very different than the one who has been vice president for the last 3 years. So, in some sense, I think, Americans have a huge disadvantage here in terms of getting educated on the candidates, really understanding what it is, because there's a lot of noise around this election. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. I think this election, just like the last one, will be, a vote for President Trump or a vote against President Trump, because Kamala Harris has proven her record in the last 3 years or more. And, while she was, involved in the political world here in California, very radical. She would actually, boast about how radical she is and was and continues to be. And her VP pick along the same veins. It will take the Democrat Party and the country further and further and further to the left. And that really is the choice that Americans have to make. It's not just about policies, but really about ideology, because that's how different their policies are. So I think it's going to be a very different America come January 2025, depending on who wins office.
And there's some news surfacing regarding Harris's running mate, Tim Walz from Minnesota. The report says that Minnesota awarded more than $2 million to a Muslim group that fundraises for an al-Qaeda-linked charity. Lisa, this allegedly took place under the tenure of Minnesota Governor, and like I said, Harris's running mate, Tim Walz.
Yeah, a lot of radical elements coming out. As you know, he was also at the helm in Minnesota, where there was BLM protests, where there was, millions and millions, if not more, in damage with the looting. And both him and Kamala were very vocal in supporting the protesters, the looters, the rioters. And with people who have small businesses, people who endured that damage and really had to live through that, they remember these things. And now you have his connection to these fringe organizations that are tied to Al Qaeda. We know that both Kamala Harris and Tim Walz want to really distance themselves from the pro-Israel camp. They're trying to get Michigan, which is really a swing state, and hoping that the pro-Palestinian population there will give them a vote. The pro-Palestinian population is really dismayed with both sides. They don't feel like either side has truly given them the full support that they want. And for that reason, we're seeing protesters outside the DNC, and we will see them all week. That's something that was planned from a while back. So we shall see. How the only thing that we're guaranteed is a lot of entertainment news between now and the election. I think there will be a lot of twists and turns.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all unfolds, absolutely. A dual U.S.-Russian citizen was sentenced to 12 years in prison after pleading guilty to treason-related charges. Now, all Ksenia Kava actually did was make a simple $52 donation to Ukraine, Lisa. And the trial allegedly took place at the same court that convicted Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich of espionage back in July.
Right. And the main point here, besides for the $52, which I think is mind-boggling, but the main point here is that this is happening after the prisoner exchange took place, where Russia is basically taking a position to say, we don't care. We're going to do this over and over again. And really, it's a kangaroo court making an example out of this woman for giving money or lending support to, which is the bigger idea, to Ukraine. And obviously, that's punishable in Russia, whether you write about it, whether you post it on social media. As we know, journalists have been prosecuted for writing anything that is more flattering for Ukraine and against Russia, opposition members, etc. So really trying to make a symbol out of this case. But again, shows us that you don't negotiate with rogue elements. You don't negotiate or do prisoner swaps like this. As happy as we are that those American hostages are home, they should have never been in that situation to begin with.
Physicians in India have gone on strike following the alleged rape and murder of a female colleague. Lisa, the demonstration came following the death of 31-year-old second-year trainee Dr. Momita Debnath, who was found dead at a seminar hall where she'd gone to rest following the end of her shift.
Yes, and it's really the footage. I have it actually on social media of all these women out on the streets protesting. And the beautiful thing is that they're not just really protesting in memory of this beautiful medical student, but really taking and borrowing the slogan from the Iran women's led movement, which is Women, Life, Freedom. And, it just shows that solidarity in that part of the world to give women a voice and to give them, the freedoms that they deserve, including, life and education and truly to lead the lives that they want. What's upsetting is that this is not getting more support around the world. I actually posted on my social media that people who are supporting Hamas and Hezbollah should really adopt a better cause to support, like the women of Iran, like the women in India, and in particular, this case where this medical student lost her life.
Let's talk about some of the suppression we're seeing when it comes to women's rights in many countries around the world, including Iran and Afghanistan. I mean, in Afghanistan, when the Taliban took over, it's all of a sudden women are no longer allowed to go to university.
Right, absolutely. I mean, who can believe we're 3 years post the American withdrawal from Afghanistan? And, when you look at what we were promised, of course, America couldn't stay there forever. And, the United States was there for 20 years. We lost a lot of blood, treasure. So much money was spent on that war. Obviously senseless deaths, including the 13 who died in the really careless withdrawal from Afghanistan. But we left so much military equipment there. And we were promised that this Taliban would not be the Taliban of the 90s, that they would be the new and improved. But how could that be when we're dealing with a terror organization? Not only are they not the new and improved, they're actually more radical than they ever have been. And now we are forced to normalize relations with Afghanistan and treat them as a real political power. This is the same thing that the United States did in 1979 with the mullahs that came into Iran. And then we see it again with Hamas. And now we're doing it again with the Taliban. It's really the normalization of political Islam, which always just leads us to radical Islam. And the women, as you correctly said, Hal, are the ones who are really suffering. Imagine, going to university and going beyond that and getting your doctoral degree, but not being able to leave your home, not being able to go to a doctor's appointment without a male chaperone. It's truly backwards. And again, this subject, like many other human rights and really freedom of religion topics that really deserve a higher profile here in the West.
Lisa, a new report by the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency says illegal border crossings were actually down by 34% from June to July. The drop is due to a presidential proclamation issued back in June. But the total number of illegals, however, has reached 12.5 million people, a staggering number.
Staggering number that is evident in our large cities here in the United States, many of whom are really very much trying to take away their sanctuary city statuses and really backtrack on these very lax migrant policies that have led to, a rise in homelessness, violent crime, drug use, migrants lined up on street corners, rape, so many other things, and it really, underscores the problem that we have with illegal migration here in this country. I know that we also have it coming in from the north with, the border that we share with you guys up in Canada. This is an issue that has to be tackled. And as we all know, Kamala Harris's borders are, this is her policy, and she should stand behind it because it's something that she, supported and really didn't get in front of, so therefore supported for over 3 years. And this is why we are at where we're at. The resources aren't enough. This is not a humanitarian issue. I mean, forget the fact that up to 1,000 or more have been identified as terrorists or wannabe terrorists, who are either on the FBI list or on the FTO list, which is the foreign terror list. And we're not even talking about the gotaways, the people who have not been detected, who have gone under the radar. Even if they are well-intentioned, if they're not coming over in a legal way, they're being taken advantage of. The coyotes are taking advantage of them. They're getting sick. They're drowning. They're getting raped. They're getting, robbed. It's not a humanitarian way. It's not the American or the Canadian way. And we really hope to see some reform on this issue very soon. I think those numbers speak to the fact that reform is needed.
American correspondent and foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari from the Foreign Desk, thanks so much for joining us today from beautiful Los Angeles.
My pleasure. Thank you.